Tony D and Little Joan somewhere behind me, and this is a screenwriter's take on Anatomy of a Fall. It's 2.5 hours long. It is very realistic, and I'm going to give you a non spoiler review and then break down the spoilers. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books, links in the description. Comedy Horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 15, available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. All right, so I just saw this recently. Here's the non-spoiler review. It's kind of boring, but it's super realistic. Court cases tend to be pretty boring and long. The movie is 2.5 hours, and I think they could have probably cut that back. I think they could have got it under 2, and I think they should have. I mean, the movie luxuriates in a lot of stuff. You know, on the one hand, I kind of appreciate that sort of steady but slow pacing on a certain level, but it didn't really add that much to the movie to be that long. It made the first part a little bit grueling, and some scenes just seem superfluous and probably could have been cut. That being said, the movie is very layered. There's a lot of detail in it. It does, though, bounce back between French and English. The main characters, the victim here, the husband, was French, and he married a woman who he met in London, who spoke English, but I think she might have been German. There was some point in the movie I got very confused by that. But this is based on a true story, and so there's a lot of really good detail. I'll say this: they took a true story and they made it fairly compelling. But it wasn't that the pacing was bad; it was just too long. I think they needed to cut 30 minutes, and I think they could. You know, one scene that technically was true but felt kind of ridiculous was they reenact part of the murder, or they reenact what they're trying to figure out if it was a murder or if he fell from the 3rd floor of his house. And so in order to do that, there's a scene where they're actually throwing a dummy out the 3rd story window, and it's hitting the shed that he supposedly hit and then falling off. And then you're just watching that going, well, they really do that? Now, according to an expert I know, they said, no, they actually do that sometimes. But it felt kind of ridiculous to me. I think that was like a bit they probably could have cut out of the film. I didn't find the lead character particularly compelling, although she was pretty multi-layered. The son is probably the most interesting character. He's got a lot going on. It's a very stressful time for him, obviously. His father's dead. He doesn't know who to believe, I think. And so you come away from the movie at the end without a tremendous amount of answers. So I can see people watching this movie and going, that's it? But I could also see some movies, people saying, oh, you know, it was great performance and everything. I mean, I can appreciate the performances. I thought they were good. But, you know, and I don't know how else to say this. Watching the French judicial system was sort of maddening. They have a very weird system where people just get up and say things. I don't really quite understand it, and that's sort of crucial to the movie. And so I didn't know enough about French jurisprudence to understand what the hell was going on. I just felt like, wow, I can't believe they're saying this in a court of law in a lot of scenes. And I also got to be honest, after a while, I couldn't stand to hear any more French. I really wanted most of the movie to be in English at that point. and they kind of transition mostly into English. And then I thought towards the end of the movie, like, why didn't they just do it in English? You know, why switch back and forth? I mean, it made it more authentic, but at the same time, like, there's a moment in the movie where the judge is like, "Oh, you gotta do this all in French. It'll be easier," because I guess she's the only non-French person, and she speaks the wife, who's the suspect, and she speaks French, but she doesn't speak it so fluently that she can answer every question in a court of law. So they, at one point, she just switches to English and then never comes back to French. So I don't know. It was a bit arduous to watch, I'll say. Um, but I did get to the end. I mean, so they're saying something for that. Would I recommend it? Um, I think for people who like courtroom dramas and see a lot of American ones, it might be interesting for you just to, again, to see the weird French system. Um, and it is very layered. There's a big scene at the end that's very interesting. Um, and some of it is dramatized, you know. So it really gives you a sense of, you don't know who, was this an accident or was this a murder? It gives you a sense it probably could have gone either way at points in the movie. So it goes back and forth as you're watching it. So I guess it's supposed to be one of those movies at the end you're supposed to leave sort of arguing over the true ending. Oops. But that being said, it was okay, but I would never watch it again. And again, too long. All right, that's my non-spoiler review. Here's my spoiler review. First act, we get the wife sort of, I don't know if she was trying to seduce that reporter girl at the beginning. They imply that she was. Nothing was very clear with her. And I think that stemmed partly because she's kind of androgynous, and her acting she didn't really emote in a way that I could see the signs, right? Until she broke out in tears or laughed, I kind of didn't know where her head was at. Like, you didn't see a lot of thinking behind the eyes with her. And on the one hand, that didn't give the game away, but on the other hand, I spent the whole movie going, I don't know where this is going. So in some respects, it felt like one long tease to end with no real resolution. But it tees up her and the kid and the husband living in this house. The kid, I didn't realize he was blind at first. Turns out he's partially blind, and his dog is more than a companion. I guess he's sort of a seeing eye dog, but he seems so independent. I didn't think he was blind. But my girlfriend sitting next to me was like, I think he's blind. And I'm like, I don't think so. He's just wearing sunglasses. But it turned out, yeah, he was at least partially blind. Then the murder or accident happens. You don't know. They find the husband lying there like that. And, and just looking at the scene, you don't know what happened, right? You just assume he fell out a window. So then the police come, or the ambulance comes, and police come, and eventually they decide to charge her with his murder. And then she gets her friend, who apparently was formerly in love with her, knew her in the past, and dated her for a short time, and he becomes her lawyer. And in parts of the movie, you don't know if they're going to end up hooking up, but it kind of felt like they had a vibe there. And so it follows a very long route to winding up to getting to trial, her preparation, and rehearsing what she's going to say about things. And that was mildly interesting, but it went on for a long time. I think it went on for too long. So the first act is sort of the death, I'll say, and then the charge. The second act is the trial, which goes on freaking forever. The wind up to the trial and the trial itself. That's just forever and ever and ever. And then the third act is the end of the trial and her being acquitted. Um, and it seemed like the son either changed his story to save his mother or just remembered something that, you know, he didn't want to say before, and then he put it together. But there's a weird scene in it where he poisons his own dog to test his theory, because his theory was this: his dog got sick after his father had this incident where the mother tells in court how he threw up, and she says he tried to kill himself with pills, and the kid suspects that his dog ate the throw up and got sick, and that's why the dog was sick. He couldn't understand why at the time, and the dog got better later. So he purposely gives the dog some pills in order to test his theory, but it nearly kills the dog. I mean, it's crazy. But I guess you could forgive it because it is a kid, and it's kind of like the kid figures it out, and he figures out yeah, my dad was depressed and probably killed himself. And to be honest, I lean towards that way too, because watching the events unfold, yeah, his wife was kind of cold and distant, but he seemed like a total whiner who couldn't get out of the whining mode. Like he sort of slipped into a bad rut of whining about his wife and not getting his writing career off the ground, and being a failed writer. Like he couldn't shake that, and that's why he did it in the end. There's an interesting scene with the therapist testifying in court, but there's so much data in this, and it does all kind of pay off, but man, it takes forever for it to happen. So I don't know. If you like a slow sort of plotting movie that builds, it's not bad. I mean, there's some kind of amazing moments. I guess the most amazing moment is they discover that at some point the husband was recording their conversations at home to work on his writing, and the wife knew about this. And I say husband and wife because I can't remember their names. It's hard to understand people with their accents and whatnot, but so they discover a bunch of recorded conversations on his hard drive. Now she at first says, yeah, he told me about it, but then he would record us and forget to tell us, or he didn't tell us after a while. So what she didn't know is he recorded their last big fight, which quite frankly to me exonerated the woman, because it seemed like he was just, she slapped him, but it seemed like he was just so sad and pathetic and angry about being sad and pathetic and angry, that he kind of brought it on himself. Like he kind of needed to man up and just say, well, I'm not going to be a writer, or damn it, I'm going to write my book. Personally, it was hard for me to relate to him because she just kept saying to him, just write your book. And I was sitting in the audience going, yeah, write your book, dude. What are you blaming her for that you haven't finished your book? Just write a page a day. But I like to write, and it's still inspiring to me. I don't know what it's like to be a guy like that. So maybe I just can't relate. But it's a very long and plotting movie, I'll say. But that being said, it's not a bad movie. It's not poorly made. The performances are good. It's also odd because it's a foreign movie, so different sensibilities. If this had been made in America, this would have been, super well-known actress in the lead, probably way too hot for the role. In this case, they hired someone who looks the role. I mean, looks like someone, just some regular person. They don't tend to do that in Hollywood. they tend to cast someone who's way too good looking for roles like this. The kid probably would have been played by a child star that we sort of knew, and it probably would have been way over dramatized, and I don't like that either. So the part that I did appreciate that it wasn't over dramatized, but I think they could have cut a bunch of just sort of life scenes. They're just a bunch of scenes where like they're enjoying life and or not enjoying life and just walking around. It felt very much like a French movie in that aspect. And again, the French judicial system is weird. So like they send the kid home and then force on the mother an advocate of the court who then lives with them to look out for the kid, which in the United States, I'm not sure how they would have handled that. They would have needed more proof that the mother was somehow a danger to the kid, but in France, they just have some weird rules. And the stuff they said in court, that was the most fascinating part of it. I'm just watching the court like, this is the craziest court I've ever seen. The French are nuts. This is how they... Don't ever get arrested in France. You ain't going to like the court proceeding. Let me tell you. So, yeah. And then the details of the crime were kind of interesting. I'll say that. The forensic stuff. At first, I thought it was ridiculous. They were dropping a dummy off the top of the house. But then later, it kind of was like, okay, I could see that, except... like dropping a dummy off the roof is not the same as a body, even if you get the weight right, But anywho, I can't really recommend it unless you're really into, number one, you're gonna watch all the Oscar movies. And I think I think if you're an Oscar movie nut, you probably think, it was all right, kind of like I did. I think if you're a courtroom drama person, you'll probably appreciate it more. If you're a person who likes action and fast-paced movies, I think you'll find it absolute drudgery and hard to follow. It is a hard-to-follow movie, so you've been warned. But I could see why, it got nominated for an Oscar, or did it win something? I think it may have won something. Interesting movie. Definitely interesting. Anyhow, that's it for me, Tony D, and Little Jones somewhere in the house. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to all came out to Second Time Books. This was in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Is in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Great bunch of guys. Had a great day. Didn't expect this to stay so long, but man, the bookstore was packed. I've never seen a bookstore so packed with people as I did today. Tomorrow I'll be at CCon in Seabright, New Jersey from 10 to 4 for the big comic book con. Speaking of which, I got to get to bed. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.